Good afternoon. I am Manish Kumar, an assistant professor in the Department of Civil Engineering. I am representing the Summer Research Internship Program SRIP 2017 organizing team. I welcome on behalf of the whole team, you all, our director Professor Jain, Professor Vasi, our guest speaker, the SRIP Solar team led by Professor Chelvakumar, and the audience. So this session is divided into three. In the first part, we'll have Professor Chelvakumar and his team talk about the work they have done. In the second part, we'll have our guest speaker, Professor Vasi, talk about the solar energy. And then finally, we'll have Professor Jain talking to us, followed by the inauguration of the book based on the work done by the Solar SRIP team at IIT Gandhinagar. This, in my view, is a remarkable teamwork displayed by the Solar SRIP team, and this sets an example for future SRIP work and the other work. The work is very relevant for energy security in India and abroad, and I hope that the work is useful and found useful for many stakeholders in India. I congratulate the team on their work. And with that, I would like to invite Professor Chelva Kumar for further proceedings.
Thank you very much, Professor Manish. You've been a great help and support. And again, I want to thank Professor Jain, our director, for being right behind this. From the first day I went and said, we got 500 applications, and I was so excited. And he was there to support us right through. Professor Vasi, giant in this field. We are all just learning about solar energy. He's been doing photovoltaic solar for many decades. So it's a pleasure to be here today. As some of you may know, others may not know, that India in the Renewable Energy Country Attractiveness Index. So it's basically an index which says how attractive it is to invest in renewable energy in different countries around the world. What do you think India's rank is now? I think you'll be surprised. The inner kernel's wondering. Second, yeah. We are number two, just overtook United States a few months ago. We just got one more country to overtake, it's China. That's not going to be a trivial task. But when, and there are many pillars that go into determining who is number one. Now, we all know about ranking systems, and there are pros and cons, but still, there is some value to that. And one of them is the stability, the progressiveness, the determination, and in that, of course, based on the solar mission that's committed to 100 gigawatt by 2022, it's there. So at IIT, we were thinking, how can we contribute? How can we become part of this nation building process, which is truly exciting. And we put solar research as a point in our SRIP announcement. We had 550 applicants, and of those, we chose 8. So you know how good they are. One of them has gone back because their academic year was a little bit out of sync, so they came a month early, and she left a month earlier as well from Sri Lanka. And then we also have a student from KIIT Bhubaneshwar. The others are all our students, second year, third year, and fourth year distributed around. So with that, I think I'm going to invite the first presenters to come and give a presentation. So Prathamesh, you're going to start. Okay, and Saksham, we will do it together. All right.
Thank you, Professor Chalva. So, the world energy consumption has doubled in the last 40 years. This has taken mankind to new levels of technology and new advances. But now that has taken a toll on our planet. You might have heard the news a couple of days back that an iceberg 4 times the size of London has separated from the Larsen Sea ice shelf in Antarctica. This is one of the major examples of the negative effects of climate change that is happening. But some of us have realized that we need to make a shift to renewable sources of energy to fight this climate change. Uh, since the year 2000, the energy that is produced from renewable sources has taken a boost, and it is increasing many folds. And the wave has hit India in 2010. With the National Solar Mission, there is a continuous demand. In this chapter, we have tried to understand the manufacturing landscape of the solar in India. Even though there is a continuous demand because of the National Solar Mission, in the last year, the number of cells that were installed, out of them, 88% were imported. So why is not India able to tap into that market? Our forecast has shown that India will be only able to reach 30% of its planned target by 2022. So now I like to invite Saksham, who will talk about the problems that the manufacturing landscape has faced in India.
Thank you, Prathamesh. So one of the key focuses of ours on this chapter was to try and figure out what are the problems that the manufacturers are facing in the country. So some of the results of the study have been highlighted. So the first major problem is the competition from global players. So China has a well-established manufacturing industry. The average size of an industry in China is about 5 times that of an Indian. So economies of scale combined with large tax holidays and incentives provided by their government has led to 10 to 20% decrease in Chinese goods costs, which is hampering the growth of Indian industry. The second major issue is the weak supply chain in India. So domestic players do not have access to high quality upstream raw materials. For example, polysilicon, which is a very critical raw material in the process, is wholly imported in India today, and it accounts for around 42% of the total cost of production. The third and another major issue is improper government support. So even though government has put in place many initiatives like Make in India to promote manufacturing, the proper implementation is still lacking. There is again delay in providing incentives, which has been a pain point for the manufacturers in the country. Companies like Adani have differed from their production targets, citing improper government regulations. And the last and one of the other major problems is the lack of research and development by private organizations. So the industry is highly price competitive, and hence diverting their resources to research and development is a difficult task for private corporations, which is again hampering the growth of the industry. So some concentrated efforts in these key findings can result into a many-fold increase in the manufacturing capability of India in the coming years. So now I'd like to hand over the mic to Path, who will be discussing about off-grid solar in India.
Thank you, Saksham. First, I'd like to stress on the importance of the off-grid sector. So, it is estimated that approximately 240 million people in India do not have access to commercial electricity. And according to the claims of the Rural Electrification Program, 99% of the villages have been electrified. But the real statistics show that a quarter of all rural Indian households in India do not have an electrical connection. So, with this boost of the National Solar Mission, it is a great opportunity to electrify these villages, and that too through through alternate source of energy like solar. In order to understand the rural households, we conducted a survey in 3 villages: our neighboring village Basan, and Kayyal and Navishadavi villages in Mehsana district. The findings of the survey reveal that the primary requirement of the people were lighting, fans, and refrigeration, whereas computers and basic kitchen appliances were considered insignificant. I'd like to emphasize here that we are just scratching the surface over here in terms of understanding the off-grid sector. It's an ongoing process, and we plan to document extensively on the off-grid sector by reaching out to remote villages in the future. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite Navjot to explain the role of government.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Dinusha. She was a part of this group, and she was partnered with me to help to analyze what is the role of government to make the installation of 12.2 gigawatt till now. So the government plays a very vital role here. They make policies, set rules and regulations so that the ease of the business is going very well. The central government gave incentives like tax concessions on basic custom duties and all GSTs, and also provide generation based incentives. The state government makes the land allotment very easier. They provide infrastructure for the grid evacuation facilities. The state government has also made some dedicated cells that is only regarding only for solar, that only makes ideas and implementations for solars. And the government also make the growth analysis, check the growth, and see whether we are able to reach 100 gigawatt or not, and make some serious decisions on that. Like the first decision that government of Gujarat made to remove the capacity tariff of 50% from the rooftop. That was a major role that the government of Gujarat take for the rooftop implementations. Now I would like to hand over the mic to Priyank Priyadarshi.
Thank you so much, Navjot. Very warm greetings to our director, chief guest, Professor Vasi, and Professor Chelva. And so I have worked on India's energy independence, India's situation, India's initiation on producing solar power, and the reasons behind it. So globally, we have been using non-renewable resources for our energy needs, but we cannot rely on them. Solar being one of the biggest renewable resource uh, all over the world, and India with the solar insolence of an average of 5 kilowatt peak, become a great market for every player in the world. India has been dealt with many ups and downs while achieving the stage which is current right now. Few facts that India had 14 companies that manufactured solar cells and modules by 2007. India has started its solar power production with the solar cell manufacturing bloom in China. U.S. conflicts with U.S. has played a vital role in developing framing the solar power production in India and also boosting it. This resulted into the production of schemes such as Make in India and International Solar Alliance. So, Make in India, as we all know, that it promotes manufacturing of manufacturing goods from the foreign investors in India. And International Solar Alliance is an alliance of 120 countries between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. They specifically focuses on the solar technology all over the world. This chapter also deals with the best ways in which India can not only achieve 100 gigawatts but also can achieve more than that with marvelous technology of conserving solar energy. So this is the timeline that will depict my chapter. Now I would like to hand over to Akhil. Thank you so much.
The average solar tariff in 2010, when Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission started, was rupees 12.12 per unit. Recently, in May 2017, Acme Solar made the most competitive bid at rupees 2.44 per unit. So, why did the tariffs fall? Falling module prices. CERC estimated the module prices to be at 48 cents per watt in 2016. Since then, the module prices have fell down to around 33 cents and are further expected to fall down to 29 cents by the end of 2017. This would bring down the capital cost to rupees 3.80 crore per megawatt from rupees 5.30 crore. Point number 2. Interest rates have fell down by around 10 to 14% in the past 2 years owing to increase in lending from international institutions like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, etc. Point number 3. Solar park schemes provide necessary infrastructure and connections, minimizing risk for project developers. Market-based factors. This I would like to illustrate with one example for each point. French firm Solar Direct entered Indian solar market in 2010. In 2011, it made the most competitive bid at rupees 7.49, a direct jump from rupees 12.12, which was prevailing in the past year. Point number 2. Japanese firm SoftBank plans to invest $20 billion in India, which translates to 25 to 30 gigawatt of solar power. We have developed 4 calculators to provide easy understanding of government schemes as well as investment strategy for megawatt scale solar plants. I would like to present in front of you financial analysis of megawatt scale solar plant with sensitivity analysis. Right now, the current values in the yellow cells are the input values, and these are of 2016. Now, if we change the tariff to rupees 2.44, we get an equity IRR of negative. It means we are in loss. But bringing down the capital cost to an estimated 380 lakhs per megawatt, we get an equity IRR of 5%. Now, if we bring down the interest rate to around 8.5%, we get an equity IRR of 6 to 7, between 6 to 7%. This shows the return will be less than 10% for the future years. In the right, we have developed sensitivity analysis for 4 parameters which are mentioned to show the sensitivity of each parameter. With this, I would like to hand over the mic to Puneet. He would like to.
Thank you, Akhil, and good afternoon, everyone. So, my chapter is an attempt to explain why I believe that India is the golden opportunity in the solar industry right now. As Professor Chelva told us, that India ranks second in the country attractiveness index, leaving behind solar giants like US and Japan. It is mainly because of two reasons. Firstly, the solar PV prices has reduced, and secondly, because of Modi government's power commitment towards solar. Now, uh, uh, and it has started showing results. Since 2014, the cumulative capacity has doubled each year. Now, to attract investment, there are some serious challenges in the utility scale and the rooftop solar market which needs to be addressed. I've explained some of them in my chapter, and for instance, I would like to discuss the Uday scheme here now. So, the distribution companies in India have acquired a cumulative debt of 4.3 lakh crore rupees. Now, in order to improve their financial condition, in November 2015, the Ministry of Power launched an Uday scheme, which mandates the states to take over 75% of this debt. Then I explain the future impact of the recently launched goods and services tax, and what are the issues the government is facing in implementing it. Then I sign off by explaining the various business opportunities and the statewide rating, which explains the ease of doing business in various states. Now, I would like to call on Professor Chelva on the stage. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Puneet. I would like to invite Professor Vasi to some words with us. I spoke with you briefly about Professor Vasi, his career, and everything is so impressive, yet he is so humble. That was the first thing that I found when I spoke with him on phone. He has always been very helpful. He has been the deputy director at IIT Bombay. He was the head of the department of the electrical engineering department at IIT Bombay. His work in solar voltaic and other semiconductor areas, including VLSI, is extremely highly respected. And Professor Sharan, an old friend of Professor Vasi, has told me that he sits on so many government regulatory bodies and advisory agencies that one cannot list all of them. He's also a fellow of the IEEE. Goes on and on and on. I would like Professor Vasi to please share with us some of his thoughts on solar energy in solar power in India. Professor Vasi.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks, Professor Chelvakumar. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thanks, Professor Jain, for your warm welcome also. I've long wanted to come to IIT Gandhinagar, and of course, Professor Sharan has been telling me for many years to come. And finally, Professor Chelvakumar, thanks to your very specific invitation, if I can come here on a particular day at a particular time, I did make it. Uh, I must say I've been very impressed by all of your presentations, Professor Chelva Kumar. You've really put together an excellent team, which has really done some very good work. And I must say I've learned a lot, of course, through your very brief presentations here, but also by looking at the poster outside. Incidentally, Professor Chelva Kumar, I'm still in the learning mode as far as solar is concerned, because I've been in photovoltaics only since about 2010. So that's 7 years, and I think not enough time to really get the full feel, which I did have, I feel, for the microelectronics activity, in which I was there for, more like 30 plus years. but also moving into a relatively new field. Of course, there are some connections between photovoltaics and microelectronics, but the great advantage of moving to a new field is, you're back in the learning mode, and also it's a real relief to be able to ask questions. Often many of these questions are really stupid questions, and I had got to the point where in microelectronics I was always hesitant to ask questions because it looked like a stupid question. Someone would say, after being in this area for 35 years, you're still asking a question like this, whereas that burden just disappears when you go into a new field. I'll just talk very quickly about some of the challenges and opportunities. Let's say opportunities and challenges. There are many opportunities, but definitely also a few challenges for our solar mission. Here is my, can we adjust it's being cut off a little bit. Just see if we can adjust the resolution or something. But anyway, while that's happening, I'll just talk about, of course, most of you know something about the solar mission. Definitely all of you know about it. But let me talk about some of the opportunities and challenges. So talking about first just our solar mission, of course, India enjoys very good insolation. So that is one great advantage we have compared to other countries. For example, a pioneer country like Germany in photovoltaics, they really did not have that much insolation, but still they are the people who made it all possible for us. The mission itself was launched in 2010. That's about when I entered this area. The target of 100 gigawatts, however, is a more recent target, but it's a very good target. Our earlier target, as you may know, was 20 gigawatts. That seemed in 2010 such a daunting target, and we were wondering how we would ever meet it. But the 100 gigawatt target really is the one which we should be striving for, and I'm pretty sure we are going to come very close to it. Of course, at the time it was set up, it was an important part of our, really the climate control, the so-called National Action Plan for Climate Control. So why PV, solar energy? Well, first of all, of course, it is a clean and sustainable energy generation. That's very important for various reasons, some of which I'll touch upon. But also, as was mentioned by one of your posters and one of you had pointed out, the ability to serve areas not connected to the grid. And really not only areas, but even households not connected to a village is deemed to be electrified if the power reaches that village, but 90% of the households in that village may still not have electricity. This is a good way to do it. It's highly scalable. That's the great thing about solar. From a fraction of a watt, which you would use for a reading lamp, to really are talking about several gigawatts which you have in a utility scale. It's really the same basic technology which is being used. Very fast implementation. You can put up a 250 megawatt power plant in matter of really months. This is unbelievable, certainly for nuclear, but even for a coal power, you're talking about much longer times. If you look at a country like India, where you want to not only get energy out to the people, but you need to do it quickly. You don't want to do it over a 5 or 10-year time frame. Really, solar is the solution. I think Mr. Modi really, got on to this point. We need the energy and we need it quickly. Solar is the only way to do it. It's really today a plug and play technology. I like to think of it as a plug and play technology, and that makes it very easy. Unlike, for example, there's also the solar, the CSP, concentrated solar power, which held and still holds a lot of potential, but it requires really so much detailed engineering to be done. It cannot be done very quickly. Of course, it's increasingly cost competitive. The LCOEs are falling, 4, 3, etc. per unit. We have to be a little worried about how we do the LCOE. I was talking to you about the financial calculations. What exactly are the assumptions? It does allow us to meet our COP21 Paris agreements. I've just written those down here. Of course, the biggest driver in the viability of solar has been the decreasing cost in solar modules. This has really been falling down quite rapidly. Of course, it has been going like something like this. 17 has come down somewhere around here. There was a little hump up here, and that was because of a global shortage of the availability of silicon. For some reason, I mean, the reason simply is that they were making silicon for chips, where you need a tiny little bit of silicon. But when the solar market took off, there just was not enough silicon available. But as soon as they could manage that, again, the prices have dropped down. Something like Moore's law. In 2014, the module cost was 70 cents per watt. Today, as you mentioned, it has come down much further. And this is really what is driving silicon photovoltaics, not silicon photovoltaics. The grid parity question has always been bothering people. You know, we're talking about 2008, 9, 10 timeframe. Solar was so much more expensive than what you could get from the grid that did it really make sense to go for solar? The answer through projections like this, and this projection is probably about 4 years old or so, is that look, the solar prices will keep going down. The other prices, coal-based power plants, etc., will keep increasing. You will reach grid parity somewhere around 16, and indeed, we have crossed that grid parity point today. It's cheaper on the LCOE basis, that's a levelized cost of energy basis, to set up solar rather than coal. What are the opportunities which this has presented? Well, of course, first of all, we must agree that it's a clean source of energy. And this is really important because, you know, pollution is creating a major problem in our country also. You know, China went through this about 2 or 3 years ago, where they had to clean up simply because of the kind of pollution. That's very much true of India today also. Incidentally, this is one of the reasons why India will not do very well in concentrated solar power, where you need really very good radiation with very little scattering in the atmosphere, and whether it's pollution or simply the airborne dust in places like Rajasthan, CSP is really, I feel, of course, kind of a biased opinion, will not happen very easily in India. Photovoltaics is really the way we have to go. Of course, it provides access to many parts of India which don't have, not only for homes, but even really for rural employment. So that's an important thing. For example, you know, there's a place called the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Rural Industrialization. One of the things they've done is uh, done a solar charkha which increases income by 100%. Another interesting example I had was we had a field visit to a sort of remote area in Bihar, quite close to Patna though, where again, you know, Patna, by the way, is the place you can go to in the market and buy solar panels like no other city in India. And why is that? Because you can buy panels, you can take it out to your farm, you can install it, there's lots of groundwater there. You can pump out the water and you can get a third crop every year. And you couldn't do it earlier because you just did not have the electricity to do it. So these farmers are willing to pay the cost of a panel, forget about subsidies and LCOE, put it out there, and they get a third crop, and their earnings again increase significantly every year. So it has the potential for doing this, and this is really the example which I've given here. Incidentally, talking about charkas, thanks for giving me that little, I mean, showing me that little charka which you had this morning. Professor Jain, I visited that creative learning initiative. Of course, also there are many opportunities manufacturing in India. Uh, there is, I feel, excellent potential for solar manufacturing, whether at the module level or cell level, or of course, there's a whole lot of manufacturing taking place in the power electronics. I was telling someone this morning, civil engineering, I think there's a huge opportunity. So there are many opportunities which will come up. Many other interesting opportunities, by the way. Somebody was telling us yesterday that there's a big opportunity opening up in cleaning modules. How are you going to clean modules? A lot of robotics can go in there, but whether that's the best way or not. But talking about solar cell manufacturing, of course, the domestic content mandate, all of that we have to look at, but it needs to be carefully planned. We did have a domestic content mandate right at the beginning, at the launch of the National Solar Mission, which for some reason, for reasons which we know, what they said is that if you have a silicon module, then there is a certain domestic content mandate because there were many people making silicon. But if you have a thin film module, you don't really need a domestic content man. So what this did was to really skew the whole dynamics, and we had a lot of thin film modules being set up in the first couple of years of the National Solar Mission, completely different from what was happening all over the world. So we have to plan the mandates carefully. Of course, it should be of limited duration. It cannot be a forever subsidy. And again, as you mentioned, the WTO regulations and all have to be looked at. But of course, there are these independence, security, energy independence, energy security issues which we have to look at. What to manufacture? I was telling Professor Chelvakumar today that we have, in fact, on Monday, a one-day workshop at IIT Bombay, where Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala is now an advisor in the ministry, and he and the government are really again pushing for the cell manufacturing in India. But he's asking these questions: what do we manufacture? Is it the traditional silicon? Can we ever compete with the large silicon manufacturers all over the world? Or SIGs or CATL, some of the other technologies. What about the new perovskites which are coming up? All of this, of course, being tied up to the Make in India kind of initiative, which is again what Professor Jhunjhunwala is now pushing through the Ministry of Power. Let me just talk a little bit about the perovskite, because they are definitely interesting materials and interesting solar cells. And the great thing about these materials is that they're very easy to deposit. You don't really need a very high tech facility to make these solar cells. They really started off in about 2000 and maybe about 13 or 14, and going up in the last 4 years from about 3% efficiency to more than, I think today they've reached about 23% efficiency. Very efficient, as efficient as silicon. And this very dramatic increase in efficiency tells us that there is a potential of using perovskites. And the chemistry, by the way, is very good. I was telling someone this just some time ago, that typically an electrical engineer interested in device engineering had to know his physics, the quantum mechanics and so on, because it all was based on physics. Those days, I feel, are over. Today you have to know your chemistry and biology, otherwise you won't make a good electrical engineer. And Professor Jain, I know that the way you are trying to set it up here is for all of these people to be talking to each other. I think that's extremely important and going to be even more important as we move forward. So the perovskite are really very interesting materials, and I've, of course, had to learn a little bit of chemistry to figure that out. But the other thing about perovskites is that they're giving rise to the opportunity to make perovskite on silicon tandem cells. So you have really two solar cells, one on top of the other. And in fact, I've said here 13.7, but this is about a year and a half ago. But Professor Chelvakumar, I was telling you I was in Washington, D.C. for the photovoltaics conference. So they have now shown 23% perovskite on silicon solar cell. And they're talking about 30% perovskite on silicon solar cells. Those are numbers which, if they happen, really are going to change the photovoltaic scenario. But I should tell you that this 23% perovskite on silicon solar cell is about 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters big, and it lasts for about 6 months or so. So you have to now get to the very large modules of silicon, which we have today, 1 meter by 1.5 meters, and they have to last 25 years out in the harsh environments of India. So we're still a very long way from actually having perovskite on silicon tandems. But obviously, silicon itself was something like this 20, 30, 40 years ago. And there is certainly a lot of excitement and potential in these new materials. What are the challenges? I'll touch upon some of the challenges. One of the challenges which some of you are well aware of, and we have to also look at it when we're looking at the financials, is the long-term reliability for solar in India. The other challenge actually is, of the 100 gigawatt target, 40 gigawatts supposed to go up on rooftops. 60 gigawatts are the large utility scale power plants and these very large acres and acres of solar panels which you see, but 40% is going to be on rooftops. And this I feel is going to be a challenge. Soiling is a problem. And what's really happening, and this is something I'll mention, the cost sensitivity, we are so cost sensitive, reverse bidding is actually, at this point, it has reached, right now it has reached a point where it is actually, not helping us anymore. It's it's doing the reverse, it's making things more difficult, because the only way to get that 2.44 or whatever, every month it goes lower and lower, is by actually finally compromising on quality, and that's going to be bad for us in the long run. So long-term reliability, why is this important? Well, the LCOE, the levelized cost of energy, is calculated based on the fact that this power plant which you set up is going to run for 25 years. That's true of coal power plants. Therefore, they think that it should be true of a solar power plant. As a semiconductor engineer, Professor Sharan, when I first came in, I said, look, no semiconductor device is supposed to run for 25 years. But the only reason for that is, chips and all, they change so rapidly, you'd never need them to run for 25 years. But solar power people feel that it has to run for 25 years. This is, by the way, being extended now to 35 years. The projections are that really to bring the cost of solar down sufficiently, we need to make them to run for 35 and possibly even 50 years. Power degradation in these modules typically varies between, well, I would say about 1% per year. That's the international condition. But the problem is that the harsh climatic conditions in India, where it's hot, humid, and dusty, actually we are seeing much higher degradation rates. So solar's, the reliability and life, by the way, based on Germany, because that's where they did all the certifications and so on earlier. And we are really using those, and they don't work for India. And that's what we need to look at. So we were really asked to assess the reliability and durability of panels in various climatic zones of India. And we undertook these all India surveys of photovoltaic module reliability or degradation, which of course you are well aware of, and in 2013, 14, and 16. Just to show you a quick picture, we actually went to all of these places. 14, for example, we had 51 sites, 1148. In 16, we had actually almost as many sites. And when we go out to these sites, we do a very, very detailed characterization of the module. So we have, I would say, a very good understanding now of the performance, health, and problems which modules are facing in various climatic zones. These are the 6 climatic zones of India, going from the so-called cold and sunny zone. It's a little spot up there, but that is Leh, the Ladakh Peninsula, and it's really a beautiful climate for solar panels because it's cool and it's dry, lots of radiation comes in, solar panels perform very well there. But the rest of India, unfortunately, not quite that good in terms of the climatic conditions. We have the hot and dry zone, Gujarat and Rajasthan, where a lot of solar installations are going up. We have the warm and humid, Mumbai, Kerala, and so on. Again, not very good. Anyway, we looked at all of these sites. Incidentally, IIT Gandhinagar, of course, was one of the sites we've surveyed your solar rooftop solars in both 14 and 16. The survey results show something like this: 14 and 16, more or less similar conclusions, little difference in the numbers. You can see that the degradation rate, the average, remember, is supposed to be about 1% globally. 0.8% really is what they say. But as you can see, this is actually in 14, we saw an average of about 2% per year. In 16, we are doing better than that, and I'll tell you the reason for that. But the biggest worry really is that the degradation rates are going all over the place. There are definitely some places where the modules are degrading by 3, 4, and 5% per year. If you do that, all your LCO calculations will go completely wrong, and financial institutions will not be able to really make money. In 16, we saw it's better, and the reason mainly is that between 14 and 16, many large power plants had come up, and we started to look at many of the larger power plants, and they are doing better. And I'll show that in a little more detail in the next couple of slides. But one of the things we are seeing is that there is a definite hot climate effect. Modules in the hot climates, we did, as I said, a detailed climatic variation. But to just look at that in a very simple way, we separated out these into the hot zones of India and the non-hot zones. You can see, by the way, these are, a lot of data in here, but this is actually finally the average value of the degradation rate, which should be 1%. In the hot zones, it's 1.4%. In the non-hot zone, it's about 1%. We do it in 16. Actually, it looks like this: 1.04% in the hot zone and 0.4% or so in the non-hot zone. Yes? It's a power degradation. But of course, we have studied this in a lot of detail. How does the current and the voltage, all of that. But what I'm talking about is the net power degradation. And what we have figured out, incidentally, through our India-US series program, we also are collaborating with the US surveys of a similar nature, and they also see the hot zones, Arizona, for example, doing significantly worse than their temperate zones. So there is a real hot zone effect, high temperature effect, and high humidity effect also, although that's not true in Rajasthan so much, which is causing the panels to degrade faster. And we have actually analyzed it in quite a lot of detail. Professor Chelvakumar, I can discuss that with you in detail later and tell you also. But let me not get into that now. But what we decided is to actually have this international workshop on reliability in hot climates. And through this, we have been pushing for re-look at the IEC certification processes. And indeed, that is now starting to happen. So the IEC certification is now going to split up into a special certification for hot climatic conditions, which will be definitely useful for India. Look at the rooftop deployment. Again, we looked at how things vary on the roof and on the ground. And both in 14 and 16, we see a big difference in the rooftop deployment. The degradation rates are much higher than on the ground. There are two reasons for this. Modules on the rooftop run hotter, so they're actually looking like as though they're in a hotter climate, and so they degrade faster. Also, the rooftops are typically small installations done by small companies, and they just do not have the adequate know-how to, handling and installing modules is not a trivial task. These are silicon. Silicon breaks, cracks easily. And we are indeed seeing a lot of micro cracks in the rooftop modules, which we don't see on the ground. And this is causing a further degradation. So to try to set up 40 gigawatts on rooftops has to be, we have to do it very, very carefully. So the reason is, I think there are two reasons, and we are studying this in more detail. But one of the reasons definitely is that the smaller companies are setting up. So they just do not have the due diligence, nor do they have the adequately trained manpower, which are handling the panels when they are going up on the roof. And the other reason we have seen, actually this is, we've seen it at specific cases, so I cannot generalize, but the way the panels are carried up to the roof, there is no set, it's mainly it's actually mainly a transportation and handling issue. That's the other difference which we see. India does worse than the US. They both have that hot climate effect, but overall we do worse than the US, and that is primarily a transportation handling effect. And our detailed study of microcracks generated through transportation installation resulting in power degradation, lends credence to this. So there are certainly implications of for 40 gigawatts. The other reason again is that the smaller companies doing the rooftop installation, they are probably not buying the better quality modules. So again, there's a quality issue of the modules themselves. Soiling, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going higher. And we have seen this. In fact, we have done a series of, not a series, but a small set of experiments where in IIT Bombay, fortunately, we on our rooftop, we have at different heights. Our 600 kilowatt plant is, they have set it up at different heights. And it is certainly true that the panels which are closer to the ground, you can see it by infrared thermography, they are running hotter. So and the reason simply is that there's not enough ventilation. So we have to, what is the optimum height? You don't want to go too high because then you will, they will fly off in, stormy weather. So there is an optimum height, and I don't know the answer to this, but this is a good question to ask and solve. It's a very nice simulation problem. You'll have to bring in device simulation. You'll have to bring in electrothermal simulation. You'll have to certainly bring in some fluid dynamics. So it's very good for, your multidisciplinary students. Yes, yes, yes. Higher. Yeah, so you can just check it out and look at the temperatures. And of course, you won't be able to see the degradation rate immediately. For that, you'll have to wait for a few years. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so definitely hotspots. In fact, we have seen many more hotspots on rooftops and furthermore in hot climate. Let me just finish this because I have only 2 or 3 slides, then we can. Soiling is another big problem which everyone is aware of. And just for example, these are the data which we have from our rooftop. We have a little station on our rooftop where we do the measurements. So soiling losses in Mumbai can be as high as 15% a month. If you plan to clean your panels every month, it is not going to work. In Mumbai, you probably have to do it once a week or so. In different places, it's different. And what kind of cleaning procedures, whether robot-based or what, all of these are questions. In fact, as I said, there's a good opportunity uh, for a proper, cleaning mechanism. Incidentally, this is just a picture which one of our students took. This is not the way to clean modules because, micro cracks are generated and then they will result in further losses. Let me just tell you about this new program which we have instituted. Professor Sharan knows it very well. It's called PUMP, and that stands for the Photovoltaic Users and Mentorship Program. We have this National Center for Photovoltaic Research and Education, NCPRE, which was set up in 2010. We have really, I would say, overall quite good facilities for solar cell fabrication, silicon as well as other solar cells, module reliability, power electronics, etc. What we have done already is to launch this program where postgraduate students and faculty from all educational institutions really can come to NCPRE, use these facilities to do whatever research they want. All expenses are paid for by MNRE. IP belongs to the researcher. This is really modeled after the successful INUP Indian Nano Electronics Users Program, which Professor Sharan is actually well aware of, but also he was a very strong supporter of this program. And we want to replicate this essentially in photovoltaics. And really to participate, we are putting up the pump website. But in the meantime, if any of you are interested, please write to Professor Anil at IIT Bombay. Okay, so I would just say that, the National Solar Mission really is a very big program which we have. It will definitely succeed, and it's creating lots of opportunities for businessmen and lots of research challenges for researchers. It is really a very good way forward for us. And the challenges, of course, as I say, also can be turned into new opportunities. Just to acknowledge, thanks to MNRE for funding NCPRE. We also have this other program called Sirius, which is funded by DST in India and DOE in the US. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Vasi. If I may request, okay.
No, that's No, that's a very interesting question. And in fact, I would have said that some people who asked this question a few years ago and actually decided to wait, they probably made a good decision. I think it will not fall down so rapidly now. But a related question, Professor Jain, is what some of the, again, investors are saying is that, we have been telling them don't buy cheap modules because they won't last for 25 years and you will end up ruining your decision. So they are saying, I'm going to buy the cheapest module. I don't care if it doesn't last for 25 years. At the end of 10 years, I'll junk those modules. I'll buy the new, cheaper modules and replace it. So I'm going to go into it now, but I'm not going to go with a 25-year kind of horizon. I'm okay with 10 years or even 8 years. But definitely I guess it's one of those questions where, are we missing an opportunity of getting the power out as soon as possible by just waiting for things to get better? Well, I would say we don't need to have a parallel grid. We just need to have a situation where essentially you can choose as a consumer where you are buying your power from. Power is, I mean, is eventually conduited through the grid, but it is coming from a different source. And to some extent, the government's reverse, I mean, the net metering policy, etc., is trying to look at those situations where if you don't want to consume all the power you are locally generating, you can feed it back to the grid and you would get paid for it. We don't have this facility in India and we don't have this facility anywhere in the world. If I give you a module, there's no certification process, nor is there any laboratory or even for that matter, any mechanism to say how long it will last. Yes, well, it gets tested, of course, at much higher temperatures, although the so-called standard test condition is 25 degrees. But when it goes through the IEC process, it goes up to 85 degrees for a certain time and so on. But the durability, the point you've mentioned is very important. Yes. Yes. Yeah, but as I said, it does not exist. Yeah, I agree. And the reason we don't have it is such a test does not exist. And this is actually one of, you don't know. That's the problem, that they all have the IEC certification. You, but two modules are not the same, even though they both have the IEC. One may last for 6 years, one may last for 40 years. And you won't be able to tell through any reasonable test today which one is going to last. But this is a very good research opportunity, by the way. To come up with the durability test, you will make a very, very big impact, not only in India, but internationally. Maybe Professor Chelvakumar, we want to, because whether we want to wind up this, I'm available for Q&A later if you like.
I just want to do a commercial. So, Professor Vasi's scenario, do I buy expensive panel now and want something that will last 25 years, or buy the cheap one? In 10 years, it's going to be a lot cheaper, like what Dr. Jain said. Now, our calculator does that, right? So we want you to go to the link and you can make slight modifications and actually run it. So that was one of the motivations in developing these calculators, is that we could see without having to go through, and these are not rocket science. I mean, pretty simple calculations. You want to get the correct amounts and do that. So the team was really good in developing these calculators. So with that, I think we'll wind up the program with a couple more steps, and then later on you can ask questions. I would like to invite Dr. Jain to say a few words and present the first copy of our pre-publication to Professor Vasi.
So thank you everybody for being here. Absolutely delighted to see what our young undergraduates have done. This has been indeed the idea of starting summer undergraduate research, whether our students go outside our institute, our students work here, or outside students come to work with us. Our idea was to see if we can mobilize our undergraduates to start thinking through a problem, analyzing through a problem, and become problem solvers rather than just learning to solve a problem as per textbook. And what I saw a few weeks back when I happened to be invited by them to go to their, should I say, workshop or their, what do you call it? Huh? Office. Okay. So they have a nice little office with walls with where they mark and posters and things like that. And I once was invited by them to come and see what they have done, and I was very impressed with the depth of knowledge some of the students had when I talked to them. And again, looking at the publication. So one of the things we complain about is the students, especially engineering students, and we engineers are poor communicators, don't write well, don't write enough. And the fact that Professor Chelvakumar trained them to write well, challenged them to put it together in a systematic form in the shape of some sort of a book, I think it is very delightful. It is sort of a complete package, starting with exploring a problem, studying it, and then writing it well. And I wish and I hope that some of you will continue to work on this problem or some other problems. And I wish and hope that Chelva will not only continue to do these things, but also inspire some of us on the faculty to do a little bit more effort in training the students, in engaging with them, in involving them, and in challenging them to write properly. So absolutely delighted. Of course, solar power is a very important area, but India has so many interesting problems. India is a big laboratory for any area that you want to pick, and I'm very delighted that this is happening. Thank you very much for everybody for being here, and thank you, Professor Vasi. I don't know if Chelva mentioned it to you, but just for the sake of record, Professor Vasi for about 3 months was, before I became the director here, for 3 months, he was the officiating director at IIT Bombay, and in that capacity, he was also the mentor director or the director of IIT Gandhinagar. So, in a way, it has been homecoming for us, for you, to see an institution where you have made some contributions very early in its life, when it didn't have much to show. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. So here is the publication, and Chelva shows me that with the help of our friends, we will check on it, and that is coming out. So, Chelva.
And finally, I would call upon Dr. Naran Pintoria to give a word of thanks. He's been, first of all, I should thank him because he's not going to do that himself. He's been an inspiration right from the beginning. He's got so much going in the solar space here at IIT Gandhinagar, and he's been very helpful to us, including taking us on tours, showing the panels and so on. So, Professor Naran, if you would.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to congratulate the solar PV team guided by Professor Chelva. It was an extraordinary effort made by the students. As Professor Chelva mentioned that I was little bit involved in this activity. I briefed them about the solar PV integration aspect because I do work in integration level, and then took them to solar PV rooftop, our system, explained about the system. So with this, and I'm really amazed to see this publication form of book, which compiles the material on the solar PV from the policy, regulation, the tariff policy, everything. I am so happy to see this outcome at the end of this summer internship. I must thank this team. I would thank Professor Vasi to give a very nice talk on solar PV activity. It was I mean, the touching upon the semiconductor research challenges and how solar PV activity goes to meet our national mission of 100 gigawatt by 2022. I thank Professor Jain to grace this event for book launching. I also thank all these my colleague and the students here to join for this event. Thank you so much and have a nice day further. Yeah, thank you.